8-year-old that taught a child predator how to love. This serial killer was taught how to love by an 8-year-old child. In 2005, a tragedy made highlights where an entire Idaho family was slain with their 2 younger children missing. Kidnapped, the smaller children would go on to survive in the woods, enduring the most brutal torture and sexual abuse. How did an 8-year-old outsmart her monstrous kidnapper? Welcome to the Mystique Quest channel, where we will talk about the ordeal of Shasta Groene, who managed to escape, taming the horrific predator who annihilated her family. If you are a true crime buff who enjoys unique cases, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
I had a barbecue and we had family there, and so we just went to sleep like it was a normal night. The next day we had to wake up for school.
Shasta Groene had an all-American family. She had 2 elder brothers, 9-year-old Dylan and 13-year-old Slade. Her mother, Brenda Groene, and stepfather, Mark McKenzie, were the best parents a child could ask for. Close-knit, the family of 5 lived in rural Wolf Lodge, Idaho. Money was tight, but they were happy together.
Promise that we're gonna make it out alive. So that was, they're just letting him know that we would never stop fighting.
Her mother, Brenda, had long divorced Shasta's father, Steve Groene, but they were on civil terms. Shasta's life would change forever on May 16, 2005.
Joseph Duncan walked up to him with the gun and he was like, "No, please don't," and then he shot him in the head.
Unknown to the family, they were being watched. A man had rented a red 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee on April 15. He stole another set of license plates from a car in Missouri's Newton County. By 4th of May, that Jeep was reported stolen. On 1 June, the man did not show up at his trial, warranting arrest, but by then he was headed to Idaho. For no reason, he stopped in an area called Wolf Lodge, 8 miles west of Coeur d'Alene. He eyed the family he saw there, the Groenes. It was completely random, but he had his new prey. He stalked them for days before making his first move. He even got treats for their pit bull every night, so the dog would recognize him. On May 15, the family had a neighborhood barbecue. Slade had mowed the lawn for his neighbor, who didn't have cash, so he told Slade he would pay him the next day. Things were normal. It was 6 a.m., and in the early morning hours of spring, little Shasta was awakened by her mother with a terrified whisper. "There's a man here that doesn't want us to be here." Groggy, not fully awake, she was brought to the living room where a masked man was holding up her entire family with a shotgun. The little girl thought he was a police officer until he made them all lie face down on the ground, binding their hands with zip ties and duct tape. He carried Dylan and Shasta to the backyard, laying them under a tree. The terrified children could hear large blows, grunts of pain, and finally a bloodied Slade staggered to the entrance of the house, followed by the crazed man who rained blows on him with a Fat Max claw hammer. Slade slumped over the family's picnic table, barely alive. He roughly shoved the 2 children into the Jeep and drove off. Later that day, the neighbor who owed Slade money came by and immediately called 911. The family lay dead in the living room. Slade had managed to crawl back to his mother, dying beside her. An Amber Alert was issued for the 2 young children. They first suspected Robert Roy, a man who owed Brenda and Mark $2,000 as he had visited them on the 15th. But he had an alibi and he turned himself in, even passed the polygraph test. But then something odd happened. Steve Groene had had a fight with Brenda just 2 days earlier, and he made some very strange statements on camera. Almost as if he knew what this was about. You might think he had something to do with the kidnapping. The FBI set up a $100,000 reward for any information on Dylan and Shasta. 100 miles away at a remote campground outside St. Regis, Montana in the Lolo National Forest, the killer turned to the 2 frightened children with a claw hammer, informing them he killed their whole family with that hammer. The stunned children had no time to mourn. The man was angry, throwing things everywhere. He shut them up in a cabin. Their terrifying ordeal began. He abused them, not just physically or sexually, but also psychologically. He enjoyed playing with the children's emotions. He would force alcohol and marijuana on them. He would even make little Shasta watch as he abused her brother and do worse things if she protested or cried. Their kidnapper gave them false hope, saying he would set them free if they did as they were told. And it was not Stephen Groene. In fact, Steve Groene's name was cleared, despite a polygraph test that said he wasn't telling the truth. Police figured out that he was home at the time of the kidnapping. Their kidnapper was Joseph Duncan, a fugitive sex offender. A rapist since the age of 15, the now 42-year-old had served 14 years in prison. He was arrested in March 2005 for molesting a little boy, but managed to borrow bail money and ran away. He confessed with dark details, things he had done to two sisters from Seattle, Samuel White and Carmen. Little Shasta pretended to befriend him and made him like her. He asked them to write letters to their family about seeing them soon. For 9-year-old Dylan, that remained a dream. But Duncan kept playing mind games. He told the siblings if they caught a squirrel, they would go home. When they did, Shasta hugged her brother. As the two were holding hands, she heard a loud bang and her brother's hand slipped from her. Duncan shot the boy, telling Shasta it was an accident. He got rid of the body by making Shasta roll it into a tarp where he set it on fire. Frozen for a week, the girl was all alone now. Shasta knew if she was to live, she had to charm this monster. 6 weeks into the kidnapping, Duncan brought her down lower on the mountainside, where she could see people passing by. The 8-year-old was smart enough to realize that she would be killed if she yelled for help. Shasta began to befriend him, talking to him as if she truly liked him. If he pretended he wanted to take her home, she went on with the pretense and said, "No, I want to stay here with you." But despite following orders, the cold monster gave her a hair-raising choice. The brave little girl had her wits about, even in the face of death. She chose strangulation to have some time to stall her own murder to talk him out of it. As the man put a rope around her neck and pulled. But she mustered enough breath to use his nickname and say, "That just got to him." He stopped. He was so confused as to why the little girl liked him and was so nice to him. But he told her she taught him how to love. Duncan asked her if she would live with him as his daughter. After weeks of torture and sexual abuse, little Shasta responded yes. The two decided to go see Duncan's mother. It was 2 in July 2005. So close to freedom, the little girl casually asked him to go see her neighborhood so she could show him her school. They went back to Coeur d'Alene, made a stop at a convenience store. Police received their first tip about the girl being spotted. They went to a Denny's, which had her missing persons poster. A man standing outside smoking nodded in her direction, and she discreetly nodded back. He went to the counter and spoke to the waitress, who sprang into action, seeing Shasta's dirty clothes.
Recognized her. His entire world revolved around her. She didn't speak without his permission. There was something just not okay.
And the fact that she wouldn't speak without Duncan's permission. Everyone was ready to stop Duncan if he ran, standing close to the door while the waitress pretends to have trouble printing a receipt to stall them. Everybody at that Denny's recognized the little girl from the posters. When the police arrived, the entire diner broke into applause, and Shasta immediately told the police he killed her entire family. Police recovered a shotgun and video recordings of the children. The footage was exceedingly disturbing. Duncan had a disturbing online blog called The Fifth Nail, where he detailed all his past crimes. This was ample evidence to convict him. Duncan confessed to marking houses with children on his GPS. On 16 October 2006, while representing himself, he pled guilty to his crimes. As a result, he received 3 life sentences and then a death sentence. He spent his last years on death row in Terre Haute, Indiana, where he died from brain cancer in March 2021. Shasta went live with her father. She struggled with PTSD and later substance abuse, but finally built a life with her husband and 5 children. Shasta's story is one of incredible, unexpected bravery from an 8-year-old who not only outwits her monstrous kidnapper, but also manages to instill a transformative lesson in him: the capacity to love. As the sole survivor of her family, Shasta Groene is an example of how far willpower can go.